I've already created a long video explaining what shadow work is and how it develops in relation to the persona and given multiple analogies to help make this clearer, but one obvious question still remains, which is, how do you actually do shadow work? And what does that question even mean? Well, in this video, I want to go through an incredibly simple practice that I now use on a daily basis, all thanks to this wonderful book, which is called Integral Life Practice. I'm going to explain how I use a method from this book, but I would highly encourage you to read this for yourself, and I'm not in any way affiliated with the authors of this book, so please refer to the original source, as always, if you want to see the original method in full. Quick little reminder, when I say shadow work, I mean the aspects of ourselves that lie outside our conscious awareness. They might be suppressed or repressed, rejected or denied, but the key focus is on learning how to make them conscious so that we can begin to healthily integrate these aspects back into our personalities. Well, reintegrate really, given that they were a part of us and have just been pushed away given our development. We're going to use a 1-2-3 process to notice how shadow material became shadowy to begin with, and then reverse it as a 3-2-1 process to then reintegrate it. So let's start with number 1, first person awareness. And I'll use laziness as an example to make this clear. Let's say I was once able to accurately view myself or some of my actions as lazy, but over time I learned that it was not advantageous to admit this. Caregivers and teachers quickly came to judge this as a negative trait, and as a child, my outward-facing persona simply wanted to fit in. So naturally, laziness was going to be something that I stopped consciously identifying with because it made me a bad person in the eyes of those around me. It's far too much mental effort to analyze laziness in every single action, so I generalized a rule that I could broadly follow that helped me to get my needs met and made me in some way desirable to these caregivers. But sometimes I am actually lazy, and there's no doubt about it. But if I can't see it in myself, then what I'll do is a subtle mental sleight of hand, much like a magician, to draw my attention elsewhere. And that's where point 2 comes in. First person awareness was about me. Second person awareness is about you. So my eyes are now open, and we've pushed that laziness outside of ourselves and projected it onto another person. There is a distortion happening here though. I can, in some regard, see my laziness. I just don't associate it as mine. Therefore, it must be yours. In other words, I've become aware of a sense of laziness, but I've looked in myself and I've decided, well, it can't be mine, so it must be yours. Or that's what the conscious mind is saying, at least. It doesn't matter if it's actually true or not, because the lens of the conscious mind has distorted the conclusion, literally encouraging us to focus on certain parts of the world and leaving the rest invisible or irrelevant. But sometimes it's too confronting to even see it in another person, let alone yourself. So then it takes on a third person role. Laziness then becomes something completely invisible. I can't even see it and acknowledge it, let alone see it in you, and certainly not within myself. So just make those all nice and clear. Obviously, the laziness is still there. You can think of it like a gravitational pull or oxygen in the atmosphere. It doesn't matter that you can't see the force of gravity or the oxygen atoms. We know what is acting upon us or around us because we can feel its effect. Our feet are on the ground and we can breathe easily. This is how shadow material gets to be shadow material to begin with. It starts out clear and obvious, but it becomes invisible over time due to autopilot rules, getting used to habits and patterns that we live by, and an ignorance of symptoms, or at least not questioning the symptoms and assuming that's how you've always been. It goes from I to you to it, and gradually becomes more and more distorted. Another example for this could be the use of anger. If I don't have healthy access to anger within myself, then when I feel angry, I won't know what to do about it, and all I will feel are the effects of anger, not anger itself. I'll wonder why I've got a headache, why the other person is annoying. I'll be confused why I've got this fog of a mood infecting me. And I'll wonder why I'm so irritable at the smallest and irrational thing. It doesn't fit into my self-image of a non-angry person to be angry, which is why I end up so frustrated and so confused. So, to reclaim this shadow material, we now need to go from 3 to 2 to 1. And this is worded absolutely perfectly by these 4 authors in the book on page 49. So I'm just going to guide this on here, and I'm going to quote directly from this page. To follow it along, I've highlighted third person in pink, second person in green, and first person in blue. This might show up, but like I say, otherwise I will be reading through this anyway. So just to quote from here, we start with the 3 parts of the process by taking what was made other as the it, the third person perspective, and face it by coming back into association and making direct contact with it. We then take what was seen as it and restore that aspect of ourselves to partial awareness as you, the second person perspective. We talk to it, engage it, dialogue with it, relate to it. At the 2 part of the process, we approach that hook, but we don't yet identify with it. Then, lastly, in the 1 part of the process, we take what was only partially illuminated as a you and fully claim it as a me or mine by being it, a first person awareness. So let's summarize that, because I appreciate that might be a little bit wordy. Third person, we are learning to see it. Hence, we need to face it. So let me just put this on here just to make it nice and clear as to what's going on. Hopefully these post-it notes will stay down so it's a bit easier to see. So, third person, we are learning to see it, so we need to face it. Second person, we are learning to see the trait in you. Hence, we need to talk to others and acknowledge that trait. So we've got face, we've got talk. And first person, we are learning to see the trait in ourselves. So we need to be it in that case. Is that all nice and clear on the screen? I think it is. Using the example of impatience this time, I need to learn how to face impatience in the environment as an idea. I then need to see impatience in you and notice what that looks like. And then I need to realize that this impatience is actually originating in me. So I need to look inwards and realize that I started this whole process to begin with. I pushed this impatience out onto you and then onto the world more generally, when in reality it was my own disowned impatience, which I didn't want to acknowledge in myself, which was the real issue. It's far easier to see shadow material in others and the world rather than in yourself. So look outwards first. That's something that I've learned to practice on a daily basis. You could swap out these words, by the way, for arrogance or rudeness, passivity. Next time you call yourself, or someone an idiot or look down on them, anything, absolutely anything can be used as a prompt. And the best prompts are usually the ones that are charged. If I see someone acting with confidence and I immediately judge them to be exceedingly arrogant or an example of a bad person, then that is worth further consideration. They might actually be arrogant, but if you can catch yourself exaggerating that arrogance far beyond what is reasonable, then look further within yourself and see where that exaggeration actually comes from. I've already made a video on active imagination, and that's where this dialogue process would come in useful. Asking, why is this bothering me so much 3 or 5 times, will typically get you to a deeper level of thought than you would have been possible otherwise just by sitting down and journaling or reflecting. When I find that I'm annoyed at someone or something, or I find myself in a mood and I don't know why, rather than judging myself or others too harshly, I try to notice what it is that I'm noticing outside of myself first. Out of the thousands of possible things to focus on, what is it that I've decided to highlight? There's probably a reason for that. Quickly, without even having realized what the problem is, I'll see the symptoms of it are irritability or frustration or anger or wanting to withdraw from the world and isolate myself. It could be jealousy, it could be a vague sense of anxiety, it could be anything like this. I can then use these vague symptoms as a prompt to start the 3-2-1 process. I can then reverse that process and learn more about myself if I'm courageous enough to actually take responsibility for my own projections. And there's a wonderful table in here as well on page 64. I'm not quite sure how well this is going to show up on the screen, but it discusses how authentic emotion can then be shifted into liberated emotion thanks to reclaiming the original emotion itself, which is only possible through shadow work. Honestly, this book is amazing and it's so practical. I've learned so much from it and I highly encourage you to read it for yourself. And this 3-2-1 process is not my idea whatsoever, but I hope that in showing how I use it, I can help to make this more practical for you. But it ultimately comes down to two choices, which are made very clear on page 43. You are either going to start a process of beginning to own your shadow or to be forever owned by it. So let me just repeat that because that is the key point to this video. You are either going to start a process to begin owning your shadow or be forever owned by it. If you want a more in-depth explanation of shadow formation, then check the comments below and I'll drop a link in there to another video that I've made, which is a bit more theoretical, as well as another one which goes over a shopkeeper analogy, just to help further frame this idea of shadow work. But a lot of the videos that I received, a lot of the comments that I received on that video were about how to actually do shadow work rather than simply explain it theoretically, which is why I've made this video. This doesn't have to be a scary or intimidating process, and the more fun you can make it, the easier it's going to be to make it into a habit. So experiment with it and play with it. Try to spend more time around the people that actually annoy you, or put yourself in environments which you know might make you feel frustrated. It's in those moments that rather than shying away from them, just learn how to pay attention to what is happening both outside of you and inside of you. Obviously, keep yourself physically and psychologically safe in doing this. Don't do anything reckless, but establish a grounding routine. Understand ahead of time how to remove yourself from that situation if it becomes a bit too much. And otherwise, begin forming this habit of simply noticing. Noticing the symptoms and the effects are much easier than trying to explain theoretically what is happening. Personally, I don't need to focus too much on explanation in my own life now, but rather, I enjoy this inner stillness that I didn't have for most of my life. I've got a quieter mind, I've got a kinder inner voice, and a fairly somewhat paradoxical attitude towards life where now I actually seek out moments where I can practice shadow work rather than shying away from them because of how I would have otherwise felt. But anyway, with all this, one last reminder, face it, talk to it, be it. 3, 2, 1. Do this every day, make it a habit, learn to enjoy this process because it can actually be good fun and it can actually be quite exciting. It doesn't have to be serious hard work, all this shadow work. And all right, that's it. See you soon in another video.